Hello everybody, this is Refresh and I'm here to bring you a battle between the two Kaldheim commander decks and the Battle of the Horde challenge deck from Born of the Gods. We'll be playing two games, first on normal difficulty with 3 turns before the Horde attacks, and then on hard mode. On the left you have Phantom Premonition, and on the right you have Elven Empire, and for these games we'll be using 3 hero cards. The first one is the Harvester. It says tap, draw a card, then discard a card, and then the Explorer, which says you may play an additional land on each of your turns. And the Vanquisher, which says your starting hand size is increased by 1, your maximum hand size is increased by 1. Because I only have 1 copy of each of these cards, we'll be applying it to both decks simultaneously. We'll also be playing with commander rules, so we'll start with 40 combined life between the two decks, as well as each commander that can be cast from the command zone. We'll go ahead and get started by drawing our opening hands. Phantom Premonition draws an island, a plains, Cloud Blazer, Plains, Ghostly Prison, Windfall, Ethereal Valkyrie, and Opal Palace. I think we're going to keep this because we have sort of a automatic win condition, or at least not an automatic do not lose condition in Ghostly Prison. Elves draw a Skemfar Shadow Sage, Casualties of War, Canopy Tactician, Elvish Archdruid, Path of Ancestry, Forest, Elven Ambush, and Beast Whisper. I do not like a 2-lander here, especially one that is a bit slow. And so we're going to mulligan this, and because this is multiplayer, we'll get a free mulligan. Empire now draws a Wolverine Riders, Jaspera Sentinel, Elvish Archdruid, Forest, Golgari Rot Farm, Twinblade Assassins, Harvest Season, and Voice of the Woods. This is a little bit slow, and we only have 2 lands, but what we do get is the Jaspera Sentinel, as well as Golgari Rot Farm to potentially get us a little bit more mana as necessary. And so we will keep this underwhelming hand, and we'll go ahead and get started. Because the multiplayer will draw on our opening hands, and so Premonition will draw an island, and Elves will draw a forest. We'll go ahead and get started by playing the plains and the island over here. Over here we'll play a forest. We'll tap the forest to play the Jaspera Sentinel. This is a 1/2 elf rogue with reach. And you can tap an untapped creature you control to add 1 mana of any color. Then we'll play the Golgari Rot Farm, which is a land. It enters the battlefield tap. When it enters the battlefield, return a land you control to its owner's hand. You can tap it for black and green. We'll put it in and pick up the forest back into our hand. And then we don't have anything else to do for this turn, so we'll pass the turn. The first of 3, we'll use the Harvester. Premonition will draw a Wall of Omens, and we will discard immediately the Wall of Omens. Empire will draw a Forest, and we will immediately discard the Harvest Season. We'll untap. Premonition draws a Ghostly Flicker, and Empire draws an Arcane Signet. Premonition will play an Island and a Plains. We'll tap 3 mana and play the Ghostly Prison. This is an enchantment. Creatures can't attack you unless their controller pays 2 for each creature they control that's attacking you. And because the Horde has no capacity to pay mana, it will never be able to attack us. And so we've by default won this game unless something weird happens. For Elves' part, they will tap the Golgari Rot Farm and play the Arcane Signet. This is a artifact. You can tap it for 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. We'll then play 2 forests. We'll tap both forests as well as the Arcane Signet for green. And we'll play the Elvish Archdruid. This is a 2/2 elf druid, and other elf creatures you control get +1/+1. You can tap it for green for each elf you control. That pumps the Jaspera Sentinel to a 2/2, and we will attack with the Jaspera Sentinel for 2 damage. And then we'll go to the end of the turn. We forgot to untap the Harvester, so we'll use the Harvester, assuming that it was untapped, and then we'll draw a Plains, and we will discard the Windfall. Empire will draw a Shaman of the Pack, and we will discard the Twinblade Assassins. We'll untap. Premonition draws a Sun Titan, and Empire draws a Swamp. We'll play the Forest and the Swamp over here. We'll play the Plains and the Opal Palace over here. This is a land. It can tap for colorless or pay 1 and tap to add 1 mana of any color to your commander in your colorless commander identity. If you spend this mana to cast your commander, it enters the battlefield with a number of additional +1/+1 counters on it equal to the number of times it's been cast from the command zone this game. Alright, next we will tap 5 mana over here. Cast Voice of the Woods. This is a 2/2 elf, and you can tap 5 untapped elves you control to create a 7/7 green elemental creature token with trample. And then we will tap the Elvish Archdruid for 3 green mana and the Arcane Signet for black, and we'll cast Shaman of the Pack. This is a 3/2 elf shaman. When it enters the battlefield, target opponent loses life equal to the number of elves you control. We'll target the Horde and they will lose 4 life. We'll translate that to milling 4 cards. They mill a plundered statue. It says when it's put into a graveyard from anywhere, each player draws a card. Premonition will draw an island. Empire draws a forest. Premonition will tap 6 mana and cast the Ethereal Valkyrie. This is a 4/4 Spirit Angel with flying, and when it enters the battlefield or attacks, draw a card, then exile a card from your hand face down. It becomes foretold. Its foretell cost is equal to its mana cost reduced by 2. We will immediately draw a card. This is Azorius Chancery. We will foretell the Sun Titan, making it a 4 mana spell. Then we will end the turn. The turn will go to the Horde, and the Horde will cast the top 3 cards. We have a Intervention of Karanos. At the beginning of combat this turn, it deals 3 damage to each creature. The Phobos Reaver, it's a 2/3 minotaur with haste. It attacks each turn if able. And another Phobos Reaver. The Intervention of Karanos will trigger, and it will annihilate everything except for the Ethereal Valkyrie. We'll go to the end step. At the end of the turn, we'll use the Harvester. Premonition draws a Geist Honored Monk, and we'll discard the island. Empire draws a Targeted Shadow, and we'll immediately discard that. We'll untap. Premonition draws a Swiftfoot Boots. Empire draws a Roots of Wisdom. Okay, we will tap the Plains to trigger the Opal Palace, and we will tap 3 more mana to cast Ranar, the Ever-Watchful from the command zone. This is a 2/3 flying vigilant legendary spirit warrior, and the first card you foretell each turn costs 0 to foretell. Whenever you exile 1 or more cards from your hand and or permanents from the battlefield, create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. Because we use the Opal Palace, we'll put a counter on it, making it a 3/4. Then we will play the Azorius Chancery. This is a land. It enters the battlefield tapped. When it enters the battlefield, return a land you control to its owner's hand. We'll pick up a Plains, and then we'll play the Plains as our second land for the turn. We'll spend 2 more mana to play the Swiftfoot Boots. This is an artifact equipment. Equip creatures hexproof and haste. You can equip it for 1. We have no more mana, so we cannot equip it. Empire will play a forest. We will tap out, and we will cast the Wolverine Riders. This is a 4/4 elf warrior. At the beginning of each upkeep, create a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token, and whenever another elf enters the battlefield under your control, you gain life equal to its toughness. We'll go to combat, and we'll swing with the Ethereal Valkyrie. We will draw a Plains, and we will foretell the Cloud Blazer. Because we exile the card, we'll trigger Ranar and get a Spirit. We'll deal 4 damage to the Horde. We mill the Vitality Salve. It says when it's put into a graveyard from anywhere, each player returns a creature card from his or her graveyard to the battlefield. Premonition returns the Wall of Omens. This is a 0/4 wall with Defender, and as it enters the battlefield, draw a card. We'll draw the Storm Herd. Empire will return the Elvish Archdruid, and then we will pass the turn to the Horde. The Horde will cast the top 3 cards. We have an Unquenchable Fury. Each Minotaur can't be blocked this turn except by 2 or more creatures. A Minotaur Goreseeker, a 3/2 Minotaur with haste, and attacks each turn if able. And Consuming Rage, whenever a Minotaur attacks this turn, it gets +2/+0 until end of turn. Destroy that creature at the end of combat. Unfortunately, the Goreseeker can't attack, and so that will end that. We'll use the Harvester at the end of the turn. Premonition draws a Plains, and we'll discard the Plains. Empire draws a Forest, and we'll discard the Forest. Then we'll untap. Premonition draws a Tranquil Cove, and Empire draws a Forest. Empire will play the Forest. Premonition will play the Plains, as well as the Tranquil Cove. This is a land that enters the battlefield tap. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life, and you can tap it for blue or white. Go ahead and gain our life to go up to 41. We'll tap 3 mana and play the Cloudblazer from exile. This is a 2/2 human scout with flying, and as it enters the battlefield, when it enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life and draw 2 cards. We gain our 2 more life to go up to 43, and Premonition will draw a Saw Incoming, as well as a Flicker Wisp. With our remaining 6 mana, we'll tap 5. Play the Geist Honored Monk. This is a Star human monk with vigilance, and its power and toughness are equal to the number of creatures you control. When it enters the battlefield, create 2 1/1 white spirit creature tokens with flying. Here are our tokens. Elves will spend 4 mana and cast Lathril, Blade of the Elves. This is a 2/3 legendary elf noble with menace. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, create that many 1/1 green elf warrior creature tokens to do. And you can tap 10 untapped elves you control, and each opponent loses 10 life and you gain 10 life. Because we cast an elf creature, we'll gain life at 3, taking us up to 46. We also should have got an elf at the beginning of the turn during upkeep at 3, taking us up to 46. We also should have got an elf at the beginning of the turn during upkeep. Now we'll go to combat, and we will attack with the Wolverine Riders, the Elvish Archdruid, Ranar, Spirit, the Ethereal Valkyrie for 15 damage. We hit a Massacre Totem. It says when it's put into a graveyard from anywhere, put the top 7 cards of the Horde's library into its graveyard. Then we have a Refreshing Elixir. When it's put into a graveyard from anywhere, each player gains 5 life. We'll gain 10 life to go up to 56. We'll also hit Altar of Mogus. When it's put into a graveyard from anywhere, the Horde sacrifices 2 Minotaurs. Goodbye, the Goreseeker. We hit another Plundered Statue. Premonition draws a Plains. Empire draws a Elvish Mystic. Then Elves will tap a Forest and play the Elvish Mystic. This is a 1/1 Elf Druid, and you can tap it for green. We'll gain a life to go up to 57. We'll spend 2 more mana to cast Roots of Wisdom. This is a sorcery. Mill 3 cards and return a land or elf card from your graveyard to your hand. If you can't draw a card, we will mill a Skemfar Elderhall, Nullmage Shepherd, and a Canopy Tactician. We'll return the Canopy Tactician to our hand, and then we will pass the turn to the Horde. The Horde will cast the top 3 cards. We have a Minotaur Goreseeker, a Reckless Minotaur. This is a 4/1 Minotaur with haste. It attacks each turn of Fable, and at the beginning of the end step, destroy Reckless Minotaur. And then another Reckless Minotaur. These cannot attack, and so they will just die at the end of the turn. We will use the Harvester at the end of the turn. Premonition draws a Stoic Farmer, and we will discard the Plains. Empire draws a Cultivator of Blades, and we will discard the Cultivator of Blades. We'll untap. During combat last turn, the Ethereal Valkyrie triggered and we failed to do this. We'll do it now. We'll draw a Nico Defies Destiny, and then we will put the Storm Herd into exile. Because we put something into exile, we'll grab a Spirit. Then we'll draw for the turn. Premonition draws an Azorius Signet. Empire draws a Harald, the King of Skemfar. Elves will spend 4 mana to cast the Canopy Tactician. This is a 3/3 Elf Warrior, and other elves you control get +1/+1. You can tap for 3 green. I think we have a lot, and so I think we can just attack here. We'll attack with everything that can attack. We should have got another elf from the upkeep mode here, so we'll do that. We'll also gain 3 life to go up to 60. Then we will draw a card for Premonition. It is a Cosmic Intervention. And then we will put into exile the Azorius Signet. This will give us another Spirit. We're going to treat this bird as though it were a Spirit. We'll calculate damage. For 43 damage, we hit a Refreshing Elixir. That'll take us up to 70. That finishes all the cards in the Horde's deck. I just realized that we will need to remove the Goreseeker in order to win, and it can't attack, so we can't block. Fortunately, we have something that we can use, so we will spend 3 mana and play the Flicker Wisp. This is a 3/1 elemental with flying. When it enters the battlefield, exile another target permanent, return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. Because these challenge decks, exiled cards are treated as though they are gone for good, and so we'll exile the Minotaur Core Seeker and defeat the Horde on normal difficulty. We'll be back for hard mode. Now it's time for hard mode. We only have 2 turns before the Horde starts attacking. Go ahead and get started by drawing our opening hands. Premonition draws a Mist Meadow Witch, Sage of Beyond, Myriad Landscape, Angel of Finality, Synthetic Destiny, Commander Sphere, Geist Honored Monk, and Evangel of Heliod. We cannot keep a 1-lander, and so we will mulligan this immediately using our free mulligan. Now we have a Sage of the Beyond, Island, Plains, 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 Vega the Watcher, and Plains. This is actually very bad in the sense that we have a lot of lands, but I think it's still better than the previous hand. We have Vega, and we might be able to get some additional card advantage to pull out of a weird funk that we might have. Empire draws a Jaspera Sentinel, Pride of the Perfect, Forest, Elvish Promenade, Numa Jaraga Chieftain, Oldivine Reclamation, Elvish Rejuvenator, and Poison Tip Archer. Again, we can't keep a 1-lander, even with Jaspera Sentinel, and so we will mulligan. Now we have Amassed Admirers, Poison Tip Archer, Swamp, Jungle Hollow, Voice of Many, Command Tower, Forest, and Elvish Rejuvenator. I think that this is an acceptable, though not amazing, first hand. We get started by drawing our opening cards. We have a Stormherd for Premonition and a Forest for Empire. Premonition will play the Island and the Plains. We'll tap both, and we will foretell the Sage of the Beyond. Elves will play a Jungle Hollow. This is land, enters the battlefield tap. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life. You tap for black or green. We'll also play a Forest. We'll gain a life to go up to 41. And then we will end the turn by using the Harvester. Premonition draws a Plains and discards a Plains. Empire draws a Swamp, and we will discard the Masked Admirers. We'll untap. Premonition will draw a Azorius Signet, and Empire will draw an Abomination of Llanowar. This is our last turn before the Horde attacks. We will play the Plains over here, tap both Plains to cast the Azorius Signet. This is a artifact. You can pay 1 and tap it to add white and blue. We'll play a second Plains, and then we will pay 1 to tap it to add white and blue, and then we'll tap the other island to cast Vega the Watcher. This is a 2/2 legendary bird spirit with flying, and whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, draw a card. Elves will play the Swamp and the Forest. We'll tap out and cast Voice of Many. This is a 3/3 Elf Druid. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card for each opponent who controls fewer creatures than you. There's only 1 opponent, but it does control fewer creatures, so we will draw a card, which is Return Upon the Tide. And then we will pass to the Horde. The Horde will cast the top 3 cards. We have a Unquenchable Fury, a Plundered Statue. It's an artifact at the beginning of the Horde's pre-combat main phase. Reveal an additional card from the top of the Horde's library. The Horde casts that card. And a Massacre Totem. It has the same text as the Plundered Statue. We have no attacks coming in at us this turn. We will then end the turn by using the Harvester. Premonition will draw a Tranquil Cove, and we will discard the Plains. Empire draws a Swamp, and we'll discard the Swamp. We'll untap. Premonition draws a Mist Meadow Witch. Empire draws a Prowess of the Fair. Premonition will play a Tranquil Cove. We'll also play the Plains. We'll tap the Plains to tap the Signet and tap 3 more mana to cast the Sage of the Beyond. It's a 5/5 Spirit Giant with flying. Spells you cast from anywhere other than your hand cost 2 less to cast. Foretell it for 4 and a blue. Because we cast a spell from somewhere other than our hand, we'll draw a card. We draw an Opal Palace. Elves will play a Swamp and a Command Tower. This is a land. You can tap it for a mana of any color in your commander's color identity. We'll spend 3 mana to play the Elven Rejuvenator. This is a 1/1 Elf Druid. When it enters the battlefield, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may put a land card from among them onto the battlefield tapped. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. We have exactly 1 land here. The Elvish Mystic, Turgid Shadows, Numa, Jorgaragad, Chieftain, and Springbloom Druid will go onto the bottom. The forest will go onto the battlefield tapped. Then we'll spend 3 more mana and cast the Abomination of Llanowar. This is a Star legendary elf horror with vigilance and menace. Its power and toughness are each equal to the number of elves you control plus the number of elf cards in your graveyard. We have 1 elf in our graveyard, making this a 4/4. And now we'll go to combat. We'll swing with the Vega and the Voice of Many for a total of 5 damage. And then we'll pass to the Horde. The Horde will cast the top 5 cards. We have a Minotaur Goreseeker, a Descend Upon the Prey. Whenever Minotaur attacks this turn, it gains first strike until end of turn and must be blocked this turn if able. A Reckless Minotaur. A Phobos Reaver. This is a 2/3 Minotaur with haste and attacks each turn if able. And a Mogus Chosen. This is a 5/4 Minotaur. It enters the battlefield tapped and it attacks each turn if able. All 3 of these will be attacking and with first strike and must be blocked this turn if able. So we will block the Phobos Reaver with the Abomination of Llanowar. The Sage of the Beyond will block the Minotaur Goreseeker. And we will chump the Reckless Minotaur with the Elvish Rejuvenator. This will kill the Elvish Rejuvenator and these 3 will all perish. At the end of the turn we'll use the Harvester. Premonition draws an Angel of Finality. And we will discard the Storm Herd. Empire draws an Eyeblight Colors, and we will discard the Return Upon the Tide. We'll untap. Premonition draws a Windfall, and Empire draws a Path of Ancestry. We'll play the Opal Palace and the Path of Ancestry. This is a land that enters the battlefield tapped. You can tap it for 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. When that mana is spent to cast a creature spell that shares a creature type with your commander, scry 1. Empire will tap out. We'll cast the Eyeblight Colors. This is a 3/3 Elf Warrior, and when it dies, create 3 1/1 green Elf Warrior creature tokens, then mill 3 cards. We'll also cast the Prowess of the Fair. It's a tribal enchantment elf, and whenever another non-token elf is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, you may create a 1/1 green Elf Warrior creature token. Premonition will use 1 plains to activate the Opal Palace, and then we'll use another plains to activate the Azorius Signet. Ranar the Watchful is 2 less because of Sage of the Beyond, so we'll cast it for just 2 mana. Then we'll trigger Vega and we'll draw a Myriad Landscape. Then we'll spend 4 more mana to cast the Angel of Finality. This is a 3/4 Angel with flying. When it enters the battlefield, exile all cards from target player's graveyard. We'll target the Horde. And then we will go to combat. We will attack with the Abomination, the Voice of Many, as well as the Sage and Vega for 14 damage. We hit a Vitality Salve. Ranar will get nothing. Lathril will return the Elvish Rejuvenator to the battlefield. Empire will take the swamp and put it onto the battlefield. We'll put the rest of these on the bottom. We hit a Refreshing Elixir, taking us up to 51. And then we'll pass to the Horde. The Horde untaps. We'll cast the top 5 cards. We have a Consuming Rage, a Minotaur Goreseeker, a Minotaur Goreseeker, and a Mogus Chosen. Finally, a Phobos Reaver. All these Minotaurs will attack. It'll get +2/+0, but they will perish at the end of combat. We don't have a good incentive to block anything, so we will just take all the damage, which is 21 damage, taking us down to 30. And then we will destroy the 4 attacking Minotaurs. At the end of the turn, we'll use the Harvester. Premonition draws an Ethereal Valkyrie and will discard the Windfall. Empire draws an Elder Fang Ritualist And we will discard the Poison Tip Archer. We'll untap. Premonition draws an island. Empire draws Marwyn the Nurturer. Premonition will play the island and the Myriad Landscape. This is a land. It enters the battlefield tapped. You can tap it for colorless or pay 2 and tap it to sacrifice it and search your library for up to 2 basic land cards to share a land type. Put them onto the battlefield tapped and then shuffle your library. We'll tap 6 mana and play the Ethereal Valkyrie. As it enters, we'll draw a card. We've drawn an Arcane Signet. We will foretell that Arcane Signet. Because before we exile the card, we will get a Spirit token. Over here, we'll spend 3 mana and play Marwyn the Nurturer. This is a 1/1 legendary elf druid. Whenever another elf enters battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Marwyn, and you can tap it to add an amount of green equal to Marwyn's power. We'll spend 4 more mana to cast Lathril. Then we will go to combat and we will attack with everything that is capable of attacking for 27 damage. We hit a refreshing elixir, taking us back up to 40. We hit an altar of Mogus. We'll sacrifice the Mogus' Chosen. We hit a plundered statue. Premonition draws a Arcane Artisan, and Empire draws a Casualties of War. That ends that. We will cast the Arcane Signet from exile. That'll trigger Vega. We'll draw. We get a Soul Ring. We will pay 1 mana to play the Soul Ring. This is an artifact. You can tap it for 2 colorless. We'll tap the Soul Ring and the Tranquil Cove to play the Arcane Artisan. This is a 0/3 human wizard, and you can pay 2 blue and tap for target player to draw a card, then exiles a card from their hand. If a creature was exiled this way, that player creates a token that's a copy of that creature. When it leaves the battlefield, exile all tokens created with it at the beginning of the next end step. Then we'll spend the rest of the mana to cast the Mist Meadow Witch. This is a 1/1 Kitkin Wizard, and you can pay 2 white and a blue to exile target creature. Return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. We will then pass the turn to the Horde. The Horde will cast the top 5 cards. The only card that is there to cast is the Phobos Reaver. It will attack, and we will block it with the Ethereal Valkyrie, and it will die. And the Kaldheim Commander decks defeat the Horde on hard mode as well, with no relative difficulty. This was a pretty slam dunk pair of games here. Let me know what you thought about the games in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. If you'd like to see more of my videos, you can hit subscribe. This is Refresh. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.